His father was not pleased to see him. He had imagined Michelangelo to be earning large sums from the Pope in Rome. He took over his front room again, set today's Our Lady on a work stand, checked his marble for the Apostle Matthew where it was stored in a Duomo workshed, carried home from the foundry the still unfinished bronze David. His cartoon for the bathers had been moved from the dyer's hall, mounted on a fir tree frame and attached to the wall of the gallery beyond the great hall of the Palazzo della Signoria. The news of the exchange in the yard of the Poggibonsi Inn took only a few hours to make its way over the mountain. When he and Granacci reached Rustici's studio for supper with the company, he found himself a hero. What a tremendous compliment Pope Julius has paid you, cried Botticelli, who had painted frescoes in the Sistine Chapel for Julius' uncle, Pope Sixtus IV, to send an armed recovery party after you. When has this ever happened to an artist? Never, growled Il Cronaca. One artist is like another. If he vanishes, there are a dozen to take his place. But here is the Pope acknowledging that an artist is an individual, added Rustici excitedly, with special talents and gifts not to be found in exactly the same combination in anyone else in the world. Michelangelo felt more put upon than a hero. What else could I have done? He cried as Granacci shoved a glass of wine into his hand. I was barred from the Vatican. The following morning, Michelangelo was awakened to the fact that the Florentine government did not agree with the Company of the Cauldron on the beneficent effects of his revolt. Gonfaloniere, Soderini's face, was grave when he received Michelangelo in his office. I am apprehensive about what you did. At Rome, as the Pope's sculptor, you could be of considerable help to Florence. Defying him, you become a source of potential danger to us. You are the first Florence to defy a Pope since Savonarola. I'm afraid your fate will be about the same. You mean I'll be hanged from a gibbet in the piazza and then burned? He shivered involuntarily. Soderini smiled, for the first time wobbling the end of his nose. You are not guilty of heresy, only of disobedience, but in the end the Pope will have his way. Gonfaloniere, all I want to do is settle down in Florence. I'll start carving the St. Matthew tomorrow so that I can have my house back. Soderini's skin went as yellow-white as his hair. Florence cannot renew your sculpture contract now. His Holiness would consider it a personal affront. No one can employ you, not Doni or Pitti or Taddei, without incurring the Pope's enmity, not until you complete Julius II's tomb, or the Holy Father releases you. Would it embarrass you if I were to complete existing contracts? Finish the David. Our ambassador in Paris keeps writing that the king is irritated with us because we do not send the statue. And the bathers. Can I do the fresco? Soderini looked up at him. You have not been in the great hall. The groom brought me through your apartment. I suggest you go out that way. He went directly to the east side of the council platform where Leonardo da Vinci had painted the Battle of Anghiari. The back of his hand swung up to his mouth. Dio mio, no! The entire lower half of Leonardo's fresco was in ruin, the colors having run as sharply downward as though pulled by powerful magnets. Horses, men, spears, trees, rocks, having flowed into each other in an indistinguishable chaos of color. All the antagonism, the quarrels, the feuds washed away in whatever solvent had destroyed Leonardo's magnificent mural. Michelangelo felt only the deepest regret for a fellow artist who had created mightily for a whole year of his life, only to have the results wiped out. What could have gone wrong? Tuscans had been the masters of fresco for over 300 years. He felt Soderini at his shoulder. Gonfaloniere, how did it happen? Leonardo was determined to revive ancient encaustic painting. He took the recipe for the plaster from Pliny, used wax with a solvent, and then gum to harden the mixture. When he finished, he applied heat by lighting fires on the floor. He said he had tried it on a small mural in Santa Maria Novella, and it had worked well. But this mural is 22 feet high, and in order for the heat to reach the upper portion, he had to heap on the fuel. The intense heat on the lower half caused the work to run and pulled all the colors down with it. Leonardo lived in the San Giovanni quarter. Michelangelo knocked on the clapper. A servant answered. He was ushered into a large beam-ceilinged room filled with artworks, musical instruments, tapestries, oriental rugs. Leonardo, in a Chinese red robe, was writing in a notebook at a high ledger-like desk. He looked up, saw Michelangelo put the notebook into a drawer and locked it with a key. He came forward, limping markedly from a fall he had sustained in his flying machine on a hill near Fiesole. An edge of his shining beauty had faded from his face. His eyes held a touch of melancholy. Leonardo, I've just come from the Signoria. I want you to know how sorry I am about the fresco. I, too, have just wasted a year of my life, so I know what it must mean to you. You are kind. Leonardo's voice was cool. But that was not my main purpose in coming. I wanted to apologize to you for my crustiness, for the wretched things I have said about you, about the statue in Milan. You were provoked. I said slighting things about marble covers. Leonardo was beginning to thaw. Color had returned to the alabaster skin. I saw your cartoon for the bathers while you were away. It is truly magnificent. I sketched from it. Even as I did from your David, it will become a glory of Florence. I don't know. I've lost all appetite not now that your battle of Anghiari will not be fought beside mine. If he had straightened out an enmity, he was endangering his most valuable friendship. Gonfaloniere Soderini sent for him 2 days later to read to him from a letter from the Pope, demanding that the Signoria return Michelangelo Buonarroti to Rome at once, under pain of pontifical displeasure. Looks as if I had better keep going north, replied Michelangelo mournfully. Maybe to France. Then I will no longer be your responsibility. You can't run from the Pope. His arm reaches over all Europe. Why am I so precious to the Holy Father in Florence? He locked me out in Rome. Because in Rome you were an employee who could be ignored. Having repudiated his service, you became the most desirable artist in the world. Don't push him too far. I'm not pushing anybody, Michelangelo cried in anguish. I just want to be let alone. Too late. This time for that. The time for that was before you entered Julia's service. On the next post, he received a letter from Piero Roselli, which made him feel as though the curls over his forehead were dancing on his head like snakes. The Pope did not want him back in Rome to continue work on the marbles. Bramante definitely had the Holy Father convinced that the tomb would hasten his death. His Holiness now wanted Michelangelo to paint the vault of the Sistine Chapel, the ugliest, most clumsy, ill-conceived, and God-forsaken piece of architecture in all Italy. He read and reread Roselli's lines. Last Saturday evening, when the Pope was at supper, he called for Bramante and said, Sangallo is going to Florence tomorrow, and will bring Michelangelo back with him. Bramante answered, Holy Father, he will not be able to do anything of the kind. I have conversed with Michelangelo, and he has often told me that he would not undertake the chapel, which you wanted to put upon him, and that you, notwithstanding, he meant only to apply himself to sculpture, and would have nothing to do with painting. Holy Father, I do not think he has the courage to attempt the work, because he has small experience in painting figures, and these will be raised high above the line of vision. That is something different from painting on the ground. The Pope replied, If he does not come, he will do me wrong, and so I think that he is sure to return. Upon this, I up and gave Bramante a sound rating in the Pope's presence, and spoke as I believe you would have spoken for me. And for the time he was struck dumb, as though he felt that he had made a mistake in talking as he did. I proceeded as follows. Holy Father, Bramante never exchanged a word with Michelangelo, and if what he has just said is the truth, I beg you to cut my head off. Michelangelo cried aloud. Me? Talk with Bramante? It's a fantastic lie. Why would he want to tell the Pope such a story? The letter threw Michelangelo into deeper turmoil. He could do no work at all. He set off for Sant'Agnano to sit silently and cut building blocks with the Topolinos, then visited Contessina and Rodolphi. The baby Niccolo, now 5, insisted that he too be taught how to make the marble fly. He put in an occasional hour of filing and burnishing the Maréchal bronze, went several times to the great hall in a futile effort to whip up enthusiasm for his fresco. He knew even before Gonfalonier Soderini summoned him at the beginning of July that the coming months would be torn by strong winds from the south. Soderini began reading at once from the Pope's Breve. Michelangelo, and sculptor, who left us without reason and in mere caprice, is afraid, and we are informed of returning, though we are for our part are not angry with him, knowing the humours of such men of genius. In order that he may aside all anxiety, we rely on your loyalty to convince him in our name, that if he returns to us he shall be uninjured and unhurt, retaining our apostolic favour in the same measure as he formerly enjoyed it. Soderini put the letter down. I am going to have the Cardinal of Pavia write a letter by his own hand, in which he will promise you safety. Will that satisfy you? No. Last night at the Salviati I met a Florentine merchant by the name of Tommaso di Toffo, who lives in Turkey. There's a chance for me to go out there and work for the Sultan. His brother Leonardo asked to see him by the brook at the foot of their field in Sant'Agnano. Leonardo sat on the Buonarroti bank, Michelangelo on the Topolino side, cooling their feet in the narrow creek. Michelangelo, I want to help you. In what way? Let me first admit that I made mistakes in the early years. You are right in following your course. I have seen your Madonna and Child in Bruges. Our brothers in Rome speak reverently of your Pietà. You have been worshipping God to forgive my trespasses against you. You are forgiven, Leonardo. I must explain to you that the Pope is the viceroy of God on earth. When you disobey His Holiness, you disobey God. Was that true? Michelangelo asked. When Savonarola fought Alexander VI, Leonardo let the black cowl slip forward to mask his eyes. Savonarola disobeyed, and no matter what we think of any one pope, he is the descendant of St. Peter. If each of us were to judge him, the Church would fall into chaos. Popes are men, Leonardo, elected to high office. I have to do what I feel is right. You're not afraid that God will punish you. Michelangelo looked across the brook at his brother. Every man's courage is important. I believe God loves independence more than he does servility. You must be right, said Leonardo, his head lowered again, or he would not help you carve such divine marbles. Leonardo rose, walked up the hill toward the Buonarroti house. Michelangelo climbed the opposite bank to the Topolinos. From the top of the ridges they turned, waved to each other. They were never to meet again. The only one who was not frightened for him was Contessina, who was irreverent about Pope Julius, a daughter of one of the ruling dynasties of the world. She had seen her family driven out of the city it had helped make the greatest in Europe, had seen her home sacked by fellow townsmen who had loved and benefited from her family's efforts, had seen her father-in-law hanged from the Signoria, had been exiled for 8 years in a peasant's cottage. Her respect for authority was fading. Her husband did not share these feelings. Rodolphi wanted to get to Rome, therefore he did not wish to offend the Pope. It is with reluctance, Buonarroti, that I must ask you not to come here again. It will be reported to the Pope, the Holy Father, through Cardinal Giovanni. It is our last hope. We must not endanger it. Contessina asked in a constrained voice. Michelangelo could come here to visit during the years when he risked his position in Florence, but not now, when he is risking your position in Rome. Not my position, Contessina, ours. If the Pope turns against us, after all, Buonarroti has a trade. If Florence banishes him, he can ply his craft elsewhere. Rome is the only place we have left to go. Our future depends on it, and that of our sons. It is too dangerous. Being born into this world is the primary danger. observed Contessina, gazing head-on at Michelangelo. Everyone after that is a game of seed cards. I will not come again, Messer Ridolfi, said Michelangelo quietly. You must protect your family. It was thoughtless of me.